The soup hit my daughter's lap so fast she didn't even have time to pull back. One sharp splash, one startled gasp, and then complete silence around the dining table. The kind of silence people fall into when they know something cruel just happened but pretend it didn't. My daughter-in-law didn't flinch. She stood there holding the empty ladle, watching the steam rise from the floor like she was admiring her own work. And her mother, seated with her arms folded, let out a small smirk, the type women give when they believe they've won something. Don't miss this. Before you judge her reaction, hear the full story. What happened in that room changed everything, and you need to see why. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't even stand up right away. Instead, I reached for a napkin and gently dabbed my daughter's trembling hands. "You're all right," I whispered, though my heart clenched seeing her trying not to cry. She's always been soft-spoken, much like I was at her age. Maybe that's why they thought they could push us around. Maybe that's why they believed neither of us would ever push back. But they didn't know what I had in my purse. They had no idea. The clock on the wall ticked toward 6:18 p.m., the golden winter light slipping through the blinds in thin stripes. The room smelled of rosemary, chicken broth, and something else. Something sharp, metallic, almost like tension warming in the air. My son-in-law sat frozen at the head of the table, jaw clenched, hands stiff around his glass. He didn't look at me. He didn't look at his wife. His eyes stayed fixed on the tablecloth, as though staring at the pattern might somehow explain the mess unfolding in front of him. I noticed everything. The small shake in his fingers. The way my daughter-in-law adjusted her bracelet as if preparing for the next blow. The way her mother leaned back, confident, certain of her position. I had seen this dynamic before. Many times. Women who controlled through subtle gestures, cold smiles, whispered comments in the kitchen they believed I couldn't hear. They underestimated older women, especially mothers. They believed age made us fragile, as though decades of life somehow dimmed our senses rather than sharpening them. My daughter inhaled shakily. "Why would you do that?" she murmured, her voice almost breaking. She wasn't angry, she was hurt. She still believed kindness could fix everything. My daughter-in-law shrugged. "Accidents happen." But there was nothing accidental about the way she tilted the pot, or the exact timing. Right when my daughter was reaching for a piece of bread, completely unaware. Nothing accidental about the way she looked directly at her mother afterward. A silent exchange I couldn't ignore. I stood up at last. My knees cracked the way they always do on cold nights, but my voice stayed steady. "Let me get some cold towels," I said. No one stopped me. No one offered to help. I passed the hall mirror on my way to the bathroom and caught my reflection. Hair slightly out of place, a faint line of tiredness beneath my eyes, but calm. Very calm. The kind of calm you feel only when you're holding the upper hand. The bathroom light hummed when I switched it on. I dampened a towel under cold water and pressed it between my palms, grounding myself. My purse sat on the counter where I'd left it earlier. I opened it and checked the file again, even though I didn't need to. I had memorized every page, every date, every note. The weight of it felt heavier tonight, not physically but emotionally, because tonight might finally be the night they see it. The night their power begins to crumble. I returned to the dining room and placed the cold towel on my daughter's lap. She managed a small smile of gratitude. My daughter-in-law watched us with narrowed eyes, annoyed that her little performance hadn't gotten the reaction she wanted. Her mother cleared her throat sharply. "These overreactions," she muttered, shaking her head. "Some people can't handle a simple dinner." I pretended not to hear her. But inside, a small switch flipped. The kind of switch you can't undo once it clicks into place. As I looked around, I noticed something odd. A folded receipt sticking out of my daughter-in-law's mother's handbag. A pale blue slip, almost blending with the lining. But I recognized the name at the top instantly. A clinic across town. The same name I had seen printed on a form weeks ago when I was piecing things together. I didn't take it as proof, not yet, but it confirmed my instincts had been right. Something was brewing behind the scenes, something they never expected me to connect. The room felt warmer somehow. Maybe it was my own adrenaline, maybe it was the simmering soup pot still letting off heat, or maybe it was the realization that tonight might be the beginning of the end, for them, not me. "You should apologize to her," my son-in-law finally said, but his voice was faint, unsure. He wasn't defending me or my daughter. He was saying what he thought would calm the atmosphere. My daughter-in-law laughed softly. "For what?" Her tone held no fear. No hesitation. She believed she controlled the entire room. I watched her closely then, not her actions but her eyes. They darted toward her mother for approval, a simple flick that told me everything I needed to know. She wasn't strong on her own. Her power came from the woman beside her. And that woman, well, she had more to lose than she wanted anyone to realize. A sudden knock at the door startled the room. My son-in-law stood quickly, almost relieved to escape the tension. "I'll get it," he said. He walked off, leaving the three of us in a triangle of silence. My daughter-in-law leaned close to her mother and whispered something. I couldn't make out the words, but I did catch the tone. Sharp, instructive, anxious. For the first time that evening I saw fear cross her mother's face, but she masked it quickly when she noticed me watching. My daughter nudged my elbow. "Mom," she whispered, "can we go home?" Not yet, I thought. Not tonight. Not before they understand I'm not the same quiet woman they believe I am. When my son-in-law returned, he looked paler. "It was just a package," he said, but his voice wobbled slightly. Something about the interruption had shaken him. Maybe he remembered something. Maybe he realized something. Or maybe he knew exactly what I carried in my purse. Dinner resumed in an awkward, broken rhythm. Forks scraping plates. Someone clearing their throat. My daughter pushing food around without eating it. My daughter-in-law tapping her nails on the table, a nervous habit she usually hid well. I waited. Waited for the moment the room exhaled enough for me to inhale. Then slowly I opened my purse. I didn't pull out the file yet. I just let them see the corner of it. Plain manila folder. Neutral. Unthreatening at a glance. But powerful. So powerful. My daughter-in-law's eyes widened the moment she spotted it. Her mother stiffened. And my son-in-law's jaw locked in place as though he knew exactly what that folder meant. "What's that?" my daughter-in-law asked, trying to sound casual. She failed. I took my time answering. I smoothed the folder with my hand, letting the silence stretch. Letting the unease grow. "Something I should have shown you a long time ago," I said softly. My daughter inhaled sharply. My son-in-law shifted in his seat. Her mother's lips tightened into a thin, trembling line. My daughter-in-law stood up quickly, laugh shaky and forced. "We don't need to do this tonight." "Oh," I said, lifting the folder and placing it in the center of the table. "I think we do." The room fell completely still. The golden light from the window dimmed. A cold draft slipped under the door. Somewhere outside, a car door slammed. Small noises, but when tension is high, even the smallest sounds echo. My daughter reached for my hand, unsure of what would happen next. I gave her fingers a reassuring squeeze. "This," I said quietly, "is where everything truly begins." And before any of them could speak, argue, deny, defend, or deflect, I looked straight into my daughter-in-law's eyes, steady, unblinking, unafraid, and said, "You knew this day would come." Then I opened the folder. And the paper inside made the faintest rustle, soft, but sharp enough to cut through the tension hanging in the room. My daughter's hand tightened around mine as if she could feel the shift in the air too. My daughter-in-law's eyes darted from me to her mother, then back again. No one spoke. No one even breathed deeply. They just waited, suspended in the moment I had been preparing for longer than they could imagine. I didn't rush. I pulled out the first document slowly, letting them see the handwriting at the top. My daughter-in-law stiffened instantly. She knew that handwriting. She recognized it before anyone else. Her reaction told me more than the paper ever could. "This isn't necessary," she blurted out, her voice pitched higher than normal. "You're blowing things out of proportion." But her words were aimed at her mother, not me. Her mother leaned forward, squinting at the date on the form. I watched her expression tighten, the skin around her mouth pulling downward. That was my first confirmation. She had been involved far longer than she pretended. My son-in-law cleared his throat. "Can somebody please explain what's going on?" His voice shook slightly, like he was afraid of the answer. I turned the document toward him without saying a word. It was only one page. A simple page. But sometimes the smallest things hold the biggest truths. He read the first line and his eyes widened. Not in anger, not yet, but in confusion. Confusion that comes from seeing something that should not exist. "I never signed this," he whispered. My daughter-in-law's chair scraped backward. "You did. You just don't remember." There it was. The first lie of the evening spoken directly, not hidden behind a smirk or gesture. I leaned back in my chair, letting them argue for a moment. Because every word they exchanged added another piece to the puzzle I had been assembling quietly for months. Her mother tried to step in. "We discussed this, remember? You agreed at the time." "No," he said slowly, "I've never even seen this before." His disbelief wasn't an act. I had watched him enough over the years to know the difference between confusion and guilt. He was genuinely blindsided. My heart ached for him, not the man he had become recently, distant and uncertain, but the young boy I'd once carried on my hip. The one who brought me crumpled drawings and believed I had the answer to every question. The boy who trusted too easily. I folded my hands in my lap to keep them steady. "You didn't sign it," I said quietly. "I checked." All three of them turned toward me. My daughter-in-law glared. "Checked how? You don't even know." "I know enough," I cut in gently. "And I knew something was wrong months ago. The truth is, I had started noticing small inconsistencies. Little things that wouldn't concern most people, but mothers notice. We keep track without trying." A phone left on the counter with messages popping up faster than she could delete them. A bill that didn't match the amount she claimed. A neighbor's comment that didn't align with her story. But I didn't bring those details up now. Not yet. My son-in-law set the paper down, but his hands didn't leave it. "So, what does this mean?" His mother-in-law answered for him. "It means your mother is trying to stir up trouble, again." It was almost laughable hearing her accuse me while her voice trembled. She knew something in that folder could shift the ground beneath her feet. I pulled out the next set of papers. Printouts this time. Phone logs. Texts. Screenshots. Not edited. Not embellished. Pure facts. My daughter-in-law's breath caught. "Where did you get those?" "I keep things," I said simply. "Especially when I need to understand what I'm walking into." I laid the pages in front of them, one by one, spacing them out so the full picture was visible. My daughter looked at me startled. "You saved all of this?" "I had to," I whispered. "Otherwise no one would believe me." That sentence hung in the air like a confession. Her mother reacted first. "This is ridiculous. Anyone can take screenshots. Anyone can pretend." I asked softly. "Manipulate? Hide things?" Her lips pressed together, forming a thin white line. My daughter-in-law crossed her arms, trying to appear unfazed. "So you kept tabs on us? That's invasive." "You poured soup on my daughter tonight," I reminded her gently. "Do you think I didn't know things were boiling long before that?" Her mouth opened, then closed again. A flicker of something, fear? Guilt, ran across her face. My son-in-law picked up one page at random. "This is between you and your friend?" "Why would—" He stopped mid-sentence as he read the second half. His complexion changed. He looked up slowly. This is about us?" he asked her. She snatched the paper from him. "It's taken out of context." I took a breath, steadying my voice. "Everything in that folder is context." My daughter reached into the pile and hesitated over a small audio recording tucked inside a sleeve. "Is this?" "Yes," I said. "That one you should hear." My daughter-in-law lunged for it, but her mother stopped her. "Don't make it worse," she hissed under her breath. "Interesting." That was new. A crack in their perfect alignment. I clicked the recording. A muffled voice filled the room, my daughter-in-law's voice. Not shouting. Not arguing. Just speaking plainly. Coldly. Words spilling out without care because she believed no one else would hear them. My son-in-law's hand fell away from hers as he listened. Slowly. Painfully. I watched him process every sentence. Every tone. Every subtle admission. My daughter touched my arm. "Mom," she whispered, "you went through so much alone." I shook my head. I wasn't alone. I just didn't want to involve you until I understood how deep it went. Because the truth was, I didn't build this file overnight. I built it piece by piece, starting the night my daughter showed up at my doorstep crying, telling me something felt wrong in the house. I had promised myself then I would pay attention to every detail. Every look. Every shift in tone. And I had kept that promise. My daughter-in-law pushed her chair back, standing so abruptly it rocked. "Enough of this," she snapped. "You can't come into my house and throw these accusations around." "I'm not throwing anything," I replied calmly. "I'm setting things down exactly where they belong." Her mother rose too, but slower. More cautiously. We're not continuing this conversation. Not until... Until what? I asked gently. Until you rewrite the story? Until you find a way to make me the problem again? Her mother's gaze flickered. That tiny hesitation confirmed something I had suspected for weeks. She was involved far more deeply than she let on. My daughter-in-law paced behind her chair, wearing a groove into the carpet. She ran her fingers through her hair, another nervous habit she tried to disguise as frustration. "You're blowing everything out of proportion," she muttered. But I had seen the fear growing in her eyes. Page by page. My son-in-law rubbed his forehead, overwhelmed. "I need a minute," he said, stepping away from the table. He didn't go far. Just into the living room, still visible, still listening. I lowered my voice. "I haven't shown him everything yet," I said softly, just loud enough for them to hear. "And I won't. Not unless I have to." Her mother's face drained of color. My daughter-in-law whispered, "You wouldn't." "I would," I answered, "if it meant protecting my family." The room tightened around us. My daughter shifted closer to me. "Mom, what else do you know?" I looked at her worried eyes, her trembling fingertips. And I said the only truth I could reveal at this stage. Enough to understand this didn't start tonight. I closed the folder, not to end the conversation but to hold something back. Something they weren't ready for. Something that would come later. I stood slowly, my hands steady despite the weight of everything. "I need a moment," I said. And without waiting for a reply, I walked toward the hallway, leaving behind three people who suddenly realized that the quiet woman they underestimated knew far more than they ever expected. I didn't go far. My feet stopped just past the doorway, where the dim hallway light cast a soft glow on the hardwood floor. My heart wasn't racing the way I thought it would. Instead, it felt strangely steady, almost calm, as though my body had been waiting months for this moment to finally meet me. Behind me, the faint murmur of whispered panic began, too soft to catch the full sentences, but loud enough to tell me that opening the folder had already shaken the structure they relied on. I rested my hand on the wall, letting my fingers trace the familiar texture of the paint. This hallway had seen years of birthdays and holidays, quiet conversations and forced smiles. But tonight it held something else entirely, truth pressing against every corner. A soft draft drifted from the living room window, carrying the scent of cool night air and the faint trace of rosemary from the kitchen. Everything felt sharper, more vivid, as if my senses had woken up after being ignored for too long. I could still hear my daughter breathing behind me, shallow and shaky. She was worried, but she trusted me. That trust was the one thing keeping me grounded, reminding me why I had gathered every piece of information in that folder in the first place. I took a breath and stepped farther down the hallway, not to escape but to think, because what I was about to reveal next could change the balance even more than the first set of documents had. A soft creak made me pause. It came from behind, small, hesitant. My son-in-law's footsteps. "Mom," he called gently. He hadn't used that word with warmth in a long time, but tonight his voice carried something different. Not anger. Not defensiveness. Confusion, and something close to fear. I turned slightly, not fully facing him. "You should go back to the table," I said. "They're waiting." He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't understand any of this. Those papers, those messages. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" A part of me wanted to remind him of all the times he dismissed my concerns. All the moments when he chose peace over truth. But I didn't. This wasn't the time for blame. "Because I needed to be sure," I said softly. "I wasn't going to make accusations without proof." He swallowed hard, staring at the floor. "Is there more?" I let my silence answer for me. His eyes widened slightly, but he didn't press. For the first time in months, he respected the boundary I set. I'll give you a minute," he whispered, stepping back. As soon as he left, I exhaled slowly and reached into my pocket. The edge of the sealed envelope brushed against my fingertips. This envelope wasn't part of the neat stack of documents on the table. This one had stayed hidden until now. I'd kept it separate, protected, waiting for the exact moment its contents might matter. Tonight that moment was approaching. I slid my hand away without taking it out yet. Not here, not in the hallway. I needed them all present before I revealed it. But just the weight of it reminded me of everything that led me to this point. The meeting at the small community office, the uneasy tone in the clerk's voice, the incomplete file she'd hesitantly shown me before apologizing that she couldn't disclose more. That day had planted a seed of suspicion I could never unsee. A sudden sound tugged me out of my thoughts. A low, hurried whisper from the dining room. I couldn't make out the words, but I recognized the voices. Hers and her mother's. Their tones sharper now, less confident. A hint of panic had crept in. Good, I thought. Let the truth do what my voice never could. I took another step forward but stopped when I noticed something near the small side table in the hallway. A single sheet of paper half tucked beneath a decorative bowl. Strange. My daughter-in-law kept the house meticulously organized, almost obsessively so. Papers never sat out, not even junk mail. I leaned down and slid it free, careful not to tear the corner. It wasn't a receipt. It wasn't a note. It was a reminder printout. From the same clinic I saw earlier. The same name on the receipt sticking out of her mother's bag. But this one had a date. Tomorrow's date. A chill slid down my spine, cold and unforgiving. I read the name under the appointment slot. Not my son-in-law. Not my daughter. Her mother. And below it, in small letters, a department title I recognized immediately. This appointment had nothing to do with health. It had everything to do with paperwork. Legal paperwork. My pulse fluttered in my throat, not in fear but in realization. Something they were planning was much bigger than a cruel dinner incident or a forged signature. I folded the paper carefully and slipped it into my pocket. This wasn't something I could confront them with tonight, not yet, not without knowing exactly how it tied into everything else. But it confirmed what I already suspected. They were preparing for something. Something that involved my family. Something they hoped I would never discover. I straightened up and took a breath, grounding myself again. The hallway felt smaller now, as though the walls themselves were leaning closer, urging me to move, to return, to throw everything onto that table and demand answers. But part of being strong, part of being a mother, was knowing when to reveal your knowledge and when to wait. Tonight I needed them to speak first. I stepped back toward the dining room, the hardwood cool beneath my feet. As I neared the doorway, I could hear their whispers more clearly now, fast, frantic, edged with desperation. She couldn't have found everything. I told you to be careful. Should have shredded those. What if she knows about? Their voices dissolved into silence the moment I stepped into view. My daughter-in-law straightened so fast her chair nearly tipped. Her mother pressed her lips together, hiding whatever expression she had worn seconds earlier. My son-in-law sat rigid, his hands clasped so tightly his knuckles had turned white. And my daughter, she just watched me, hopeful and afraid all at once. I didn't sit down yet. I let the quiet stretch, not painfully but patiently. Because they all knew this wasn't over. Not by any measure. I'm ready, I said finally, my voice steady as stone. Let's continue. I moved toward the table with deliberate calm, the kind that only comes after a person has carried too much truth for too long. The chair legs scraped the hardwood quietly as I sat down again, and for a moment no one else moved. My daughter-in-law stared at me as if I had returned holding a matchbox to a room soaked in gasoline. Her mother's hands were clasped tightly in her lap, knuckles pale against the fabric of her skirt. My son-in-law couldn't seem to look anywhere except the scattered papers before him, each one a small fracture in the story they had built. The overhead light hummed faintly, the only sound in the room besides the shallow, uneven breathing of everyone present. The candles on the dining table had burned down halfway, their flames soft and unsteady, like they too sensed the shift taking place between us. I folded my hands in front of me. Before we continue, I began, I want to be clear about something. I didn't collect any of this to shame you. I collected it because I needed to understand what was happening around me. My daughter-in-law exhaled sharply, a bitter laugh escaping her. You're acting like a detective. I met her gaze steadily. Someone in this family needed to pay attention. Her mother leaned forward in her chair, her voice low and controlled. This is turning into an accusation. And you have no right. I have every right, I replied softly. I am a mother. The words were simple, but something in them made her stop mid-sentence, as if she had forgotten what that role truly meant. My daughter's eyes filled with quiet relief. I reached into the folder again, not for the sealed envelope, not yet, but for another stack of papers clipped together. These weren't screenshots or recordings. These were observations. Dates. Notes I had written in the corners of bills, margins of grocery lists, even on the back of old receipts. Nothing dramatic. Nothing exaggerated. Just patterns. Patterns that spoke louder than accusations. I placed them between us. My daughter-in-law frowned. What is that supposed to be? Consistency, I answered. Or lack of it. Her mother stiffened. My son-in-law lifted one of the sheets carefully, scanning the lines. His brow furrowed deeper with every row he read. Times she claimed to be somewhere but wasn't. Appointments that didn't match the records. Arguments she insisted never happened, yet neighbors recalled vividly. My daughter whispered almost to herself, "Mom, you kept track of all this?" I nodded. Because something wasn't adding up. And I didn't want to rely on memory alone. My son-in-law swallowed hard. These dates, they overlap with things she told me. Things I trusted. His voice trailed off, thin and fragile. My daughter-in-law bristled, pushing back her chair slightly. "This is ridiculous. You're twisting things around." "Read them," I said not unkindly. "You'll see I didn't twist anything." Her mother shook her head. "She's trying to divide this family." "I'm trying to protect it," I corrected. "And you know that." My words landed heavier than I expected. Her mother looked away, her expression tightening in a way that told me she understood exactly what I meant. That her involvement wasn't incidental, nor was it entirely defensible. There was knowledge behind her silence. Guilty. I took a slow breath, letting the quiet settle again. "There's something else," I said. "Something I realized tonight." My daughter-in-law's eyes narrowed. "Tao what?" I didn't answer directly. Instead, I reached into my pocket and placed the paper I'd found in the hallway onto the table. The reminder printout. The one with tomorrow's date. Her mother's face drained of color. My son-in-law leaned in, reading quickly. This is from the same place as the other form." My daughter looked confused. Why would she have an appointment there? I kept my eyes on her mother. "That's what I'd like to know." Her mother opened her mouth, closed it, then opened it again. "It's personal. It has nothing to do with any of you. Everything you do affects this family," I said gently. "Especially when it involves signatures, forms, and unexplained visits." My daughter-in-law snatched the paper off the table. "This is private. You had no right to go through our things." "I didn't go through anything," I responded. "It was left in the hallway. Carelessly." A new silence fell, different from the earlier ones. This one was jagged, messy, full of unraveling threads. I could feel the story they'd built beginning to weaken at the edges, the seams pulling apart faster than they could rearrange them. My son-in-law rubbed his temples, exhausted. "Mom, what is this appointment for?" he asked his mother-in-law. She hesitated too long. "Far too long." "That doesn't matter," she said finally. "What matters is—" "It matters to me," he said firmly. His voice wasn't shaking now. "And it matters to my son. And to this family. So you need to explain." Her shoulders sagged. Just a little. But enough to show the weight she had been carrying. "I was handling something," she said at last. "Something that needed to be resolved." "What something?" he pressed. Her daughter shot her a sharp look, not angry but panicked. As though she feared what her mother might reveal. I leaned back slightly, not intervening, simply watching. The truth had a way of slipping out when pressure grew heavy enough. Her mother sighed. It was about a document. One that needed revising. My son-in-law looked from her to my daughter-in-law. "What document?" The two women exchanged a quick glance. A silent conversation. A decision being made in front of all of us. I waited. Finally, her daughter-in-law spoke, her voice tight. It was nothing important. Just routine paperwork. But her eyes flickered downward, an involuntary tell. He was lying. And she knew I knew it. My daughter reached for my hand under the table, her fingers trembling. "Mom, did you know about this?" she whispered. "I knew something wasn't right," I murmured. "But no, I didn't know this part." My son-in-law leaned back in his chair, exhaling slowly. "I feel like I don't know either of you anymore," he said quietly to his wife and her mother. "And I don't know what to believe." His tone wasn't angry. It was heartbroken. My daughter-in-law's eyes widened, her confidence beginning to fracture. "You're taking her side?" He shook his head. I'm trying to understand the truth. All of it. I watched her carefully, not the way she spoke, but the way she suddenly leaned forward, almost desperate. You know how she is, she said, gesturing vaguely toward me. She holds on to things. She twists small details. She wants control. The words stung, not because they were cruel but because they were familiar. She had used them before, privately, in conversations meant to isolate me from my own son. But now he didn't look convinced. Mom, he said quietly to me, is there more in the folder? My heartbeat steadied again. Not racing. Not faltering. Just steady, like a drum marking the moment everything was shifting. There is, I said. But I want to be sure you're ready to see it. My daughter-in-law slammed her palm on the table. This is insane. You're manipulating him. You're manipulating all of us. Her mother placed a hand on her arm, trying to calm her, but she shook it off. This is my house, she snapped. And I won't let her come in here, Anne. I raised a hand gently. This isn't about your house. Or mine. Or territory. This is about truth. And your truth, she shot back, isn't the only truth. No, I agreed. But patterns don't lie. Paper trails don't lie. And fear. I looked directly at her mother. Fear doesn't lie either. Her mother's breath hitched. Not enough for the others to notice. But I saw it. My daughter-in-law folded her arms tightly, her gaze sharpening as if she was preparing for a fight she wasn't sure she could win. My son-in-law looked between all of us, visibly torn. Can someone please explain what's actually going on? You will, I murmured. Just let things unfold. And as I reached for the sealed envelope, the one I still hadn't opened, the one that held the secret they had worked so hard to bury, I saw the exact moment their story began to fall apart. Not when I revealed the papers. Not when I found the appointment slip. Not even when my son-in-law questioned them. It happened when they realized I wasn't afraid of the truth anymore. Because the night wasn't ending here. It was only beginning. I kept my hand over the sealed envelope for a moment, letting its weight settle into the room. The dining table, once a place for birthday cakes and family dinners, now carried the weight of every truth they tried to bury. My daughter-in-law stared at the envelope as though it could ignite on its own. Her mother shifted in her seat, her breath uneven, her fingers tightening around her bracelet until the metal pressed deep into her skin. My son-in-law leaned forward slightly, not in aggression but in weary readiness, as though he had finally accepted that the only way out was through. You've been asking what's really going on, I told him quietly. This is the part you were never meant to see. I lifted the envelope. The paper was cool against my fingertips. My daughter watched silently, her eyes glassy, not with fear but with a sort of exhausted relief, as though she had been holding her breath for months and was finally allowed to exhale. My daughter-in-law spoke first. Don't open that. Her voice was small now. Not sharp. Not mocking. Small. Why not? I asked. Her gaze darted to her mother. Because it's private. It concerns my son, I replied. And my family. There's nothing private about decisions made behind closed doors. Her mother's posture straightened, stiff and practiced. This has gone too far. You've created chaos with your accusations, and now you want to drag in things you don't understand. I understand more than you think, I said. And I understand enough to know that this envelope holds the heart of everything you both have been hiding. My son-in-law reached toward me slightly. Mom, whatever's in there, just tell me. I broke the seal. The soft rip of paper filled the room louder than any voice. I slid out the documents and placed them on the table one by one, allowing the light to fall across the ink. Names, dates, signatures. But most importantly, misrepresentation. My son-in-law blinked, confused. This is a petition. He read the next page. His lips parted in disbelief. For guardianship? Wait, what is this? My daughter's breath caught. Guardianship? Of who? I met her eyes gently. Of your son. My grandson. My daughter-in-law's face went pale. She grabbed the papers, flipping through them with frenzied movements, eyes widening as she realized they were not the versions she thought she'd hidden. Because that was the twist. The clinic hadn't given me these. Her own mistakes had. I never approved this, my son-in-law whispered, shaking his head. I never signed anything like this. But she did, I said softly, pointing to the line. There was her signature. Carefully written, carefully placed, and directly beside it, her mother's signature as the verifying witness. The color drained from both their faces. You were planning to remove custody from both your son and my daughter, I continued. You filed claims about my daughter's instability, your husband's inability to provide consistent care, and even included statements about my influence being emotionally disruptive. My daughter gasped, pressing her hand to her mouth. They wanted to take her child? My daughter-in-law finally snapped. It wasn't like that. I was trying to. You were trying to secure power, I finished for her. To legally push us out. Every one of us. Her mother stood abruptly, her chair scraping across the floor. We were protecting him, our family. Your idea of family, I said, is whatever keeps you in control. My son-in-law stared at the papers as though they were shards of glass. You lied to me, he whispered to his wife. About everything. I thought you were stressed. I thought you were overwhelmed. But this is planned. His voice cracked. It was the sound of something breaking inside him. My daughter-in-law reached toward him. I did it for us. No, he said, pulling away. You did it for you. Her eyes filled with frustrated tears. She turned on me instead. You ruined everything. If you had just stayed out of our business. I stayed out for years, I said quietly. Too long maybe. But when I realized you weren't just manipulating my son and hurting my daughter, you were planning something permanent, I couldn't stay silent. The room trembled with tension. Not physically but emotionally. The truth had fully surfaced now, laid bare in ink and signatures. My daughter spoke softly, her voice trembling. How did you find out? I looked at her, at the daughter who had been brushed aside, belittled, quieted. I followed the patterns. And when I still didn't understand everything, I followed my instinct. I didn't tell her every detail. The overheard conversations, the misplaced envelope I found weeks ago, the sympathetic office clerk who had let one sentence slip before realizing she shouldn't. Those were pieces of the truth too. But tonight wasn't about how I found it. Tonight was about what they had done. My son-in-law sat back, covering his face with both hands. I don't know what to say. You don't need to say anything, I told him gently. Just see things clearly. That's all I ever wanted. My daughter-in-law slammed her fists into her lap, fury overtaking her fear. You can't prove anything. You don't know why we did it. I know enough, I replied. And now he does too. Her mother tried to regain control, her voice sharp, authoritative. This isn't the end of the conversation. We can still fix this. No, my son-in-law said quietly. We can't. He pushed the documents back toward them slowly, one sheet at a time. I trusted you, he said, voice trembling. Both of you. And you were planning something behind my back. Behind all of our backs. My daughter-in-law reached for him again, desperate. Please just listen. I've been listening, he said. For years. And ignoring every sign. Then he looked at me, really looked at me for the first time in a long while. Mom, he whispered. I'm sorry. Those words, simple, soft, healed something inside me I didn't realize was still hurting. But this moment wasn't about me. It was about truth clearing the air after too many storms. He stood from the table slowly. I need space, he said to his wife. And I need to think about what comes next. Her mother's voice cracked. You can't walk away from us. Not after everything. My son-in-law shook his head. Maybe I should have walked away a long time ago. My daughter-in-law sank into her chair, stunned into silence. I rose, my chair moving quietly across the floor. My daughter stood with me, her hand finding mine, her strength returning in slow waves. I think it's time we leave, I said calmly. There's nothing more I need to say. But we're not done, my daughter-in-law shouted. I am, I replied. And with that I gathered my purse, the folder, and the envelope now emptied of its secrets. We walked toward the door. My daughter close beside me, my grandson asleep upstairs, unaware of how much his world had nearly changed. Before stepping outside I paused and looked back, not out of regret but clarity. You thought my silence meant weakness, I said softly. But tonight, it's the very thing that exposed you. The house seemed smaller from the doorway, its walls holding too many lies. I stepped outside into the cool night air, the sky a deep, quiet blue. For the first time in years I felt peace settle in my chest. Because revenge didn't come from destroying them. It came from finally reclaiming myself. My voice. My truth. My place in my own family. And that was the day. The exact moment. I took my silence back. If this story moved you, subscribe for more powerful real-life narratives. Your support helps bring these hidden stories to light. And there's another one coming you won't want to miss.